All right. Hey, we're live.
We are live.
We are
It's been
live.
a long time since we've done one of these episodes,
Yes, it has. It has been a long, long time.
but like over a year.
Jesus Christ, it has been over a year.
It
Oh
has
my
been over a
God,
year.
it's been a long year. I tell you what, it's
It
been
has
it's
been
been
a long
it's
year.
been crazy. Moved. Uh, yeah, good God, a lot of personal life stuff happened developmentally. Good things all across the board.
Mm-hmm.
Happy to know I survived the better half of my master's program at this point. So yeah, I mean, who knows? At the end of it, you might have a professor or doctor uh, Justin to deal with on the podcast.
Just to
Yes,
do
yeah, yeah. So yeah, I'd say when it comes down to many of the things going on in the world today, there's lots of things that are interesting that I definitely want to talk about today. And hopefully, the things that are interesting to me are interesting to you, so that way we're able to kind of have a fun little conversation.
can definitely try best.
Yeah. And I hope that if any of these topics are interesting to anybody that we're talking about today, um, let's uh, let's make sure we can throw any of the links and any of the stuff in the description box. And you guys can always email the show. So hopefully you guys know the email address, and I'm sure Rose will plug in something for
Yep,
those who
yep.
haven't. So
Can do those.
okay, all right. Let's just get started. So one of the things that I'm sure many people in the news have heard about at this point is this really interesting comet called Three Eye Atlas. There's so many things interesting to talk about this, and I won't bore everybody to tears with an in-depth analysis of all the things that are going on with this thing, but I'm going to highlight a few of the things that I think personally are worth some sort of research that probably will get done too late. But who knows? So earlier this year, obviously it was detected, um, and it was just kind of like this relatively faint dot in the distance, but it was traveling at a tremendous velocity. And the coolest thing about this thing is that its approach isn't necessarily like I guess like a normal trajectory. It's kind of coming in directly in the plane of the galaxy, which means it's kind of coming in almost edge on through the solar system. That is super strange. That's not normal for stuff like this. I'm not sure why that is, but it's definitely strange. And because of its trajectory, scientists have been able to determine, generally speaking, kind of where this thing's been and how long it's been traveling. And it has been determined that the thing has been traveling for like 13 billion years or something like that. So, I mean, it's been around for a long time. Now, whenever when someone throws out a number, it's like 13 billion, I'm just like, yeah, right, sure. But I don't know, the data for this thing seems pretty conclusive. It was tested several times, and they got similar results. So I'd say plus or minus a little bit on that, and that's pretty close, which means that that
Plus or
thing
minus
is,
how much you think?
mm, like maybe like I would say somewhere between a billion and half a billion. I mean, I definitely think this thing's at least it's guaranteed comfortably twice as old as our solar system. So this is a primeval sort of object, very primordial kind of thing. The other interesting that kind of points to how old it is that the type of gas that's outgassing, right? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's or materials. Seems to be a lot of carbon like in this thing, like a lot of carbon, and it's kind of cool because it means that it's green, and it's my favorite color is green. And this thing is just super fascinating. Now you got some people out there who are kind of like this is a bit of like a strange object. So some people are like could it be aliens? And one of the more interesting, uh, I would say, experts within the field. This guy named Avi Loeb. He's a professor, pretty well respected, very eminent professor. that was saying, "Hey, this thing's really strange, and scientists shouldn't rule out the idea that this particular object might have some sort of artificial origin." Um, I don't think that. You know, I'm not thinking that this is necessarily the case, but I think it could be worth considering at all times when it comes to something along these lines. It's not that this thing is showcasing things that I think are signs of an alien spacecraft, but they're showing signs of things that we just don't simply don't understand. For instance, its coma is enormous, but yet people are saying that an object that's the object's roughly the size of like Manhattan, so it's a very big comet. But the coma should be much larger, which is like that foggy, hazy part around it, and it's just not. It's not as big as it should be based on the size of the object. Also, as it was approaching perihelion, it was supposed to have all these sorts of outgassing things, and it just wasn't doing that. And for those who aren't familiar with some of these terms, perihelion just means when it comes to its certain approach to the sun. It's kind of like its peak moment, and that's the gist of it. And so, but it gets close, so it's supposed to get really hot, and it's supposed to have all this stuff. That's supposed to start having these giant kind of like breaking and things like that. And it just didn't do it at first. It took a while, and then eventually did. It had these like huge pluming jets that were firing off. It just it was an exotic thing. I mean, it's just different than anything we've seen before. And who knows? Maybe it's just because it's been traveling through space for so long. You know, it's super cold, maybe, and so like it just took a really long time to get through that. And there's a whole bunch of potential explanations, but it does seem to demonstrate some physical qualities that are different from the atypical. And one of those things is the fact that it doesn't seem to be creating uh, like a type of accelerant that's associated with outgassing. It seems to actually be showcasing the exact opposite, which we really ought to study stuff like this because it's showing us stuff we don't know. And whenever there's an opportunity to learn something we don't know, we should really jump on it because it's not like we see, you know, objects from outside the solar system every day, and certainly not objects that are that old. So, yeah. There's some other interesting things about this. One of those things is the fact that this object is kind of got like a weird connection with things in the past. I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with the wow signal, but the wow signal basically is like this weird, strong detection of something that basically, like SETI, was looking for a alien signal, which is some sort of repeating signal that they can look at and measure. Well, someone found one in '77, and they circled the data set and said, "Wow, that's the wow signal." Anyways, the particular point in space where the wow signal was coming from is the exact same point in space where this object's coming from. So, weird connection, maybe. I think it's an interesting thing in general. So, yeah. Um, yeah. That being said, there's some other things that are weird. One of the things that I find most striking is the fact that we can't. NASA has access to billions of dollars, and they can't get a good picture of this thing. However, amateur astronomers can, for some strange reason. You know, it's shocking. I mean, can you imagine? We spend how much money on various telescopes? There are more telescopes available today to witness objects than there have ever been before, and yet amateur astronomers are taking better shots of this thing than anybody. I mean, there's guys in Egypt that are able to take fairly decent pictures of this thing, and they're clearly glowing green. You know, this isn't like a small thing. This is like a, oh wow, that's like, and then they got like these amateur. I mean, well, okay, when I say amateur, what I mean is that it's not an observatory. All right, it's someone going out on a tripod with a $5,000 or $6,000 telescope and being able to witness it and then have a camera and take a picture of it. Now, yeah, that's not like little tech, but like that's not $20 million. Yeah, it's not $20 million. It's not $20 million fucking like setup. This is like this is something you could throw in the back of your car. You know what I mean? Like if you could throw it in the back of your car, I genuinely kind of have an issue, considering the fact that we like spend ungodly amounts of money getting instruments into space.
I'm just imagining now, like a little tiny buggy car versus, a big SUV.
Yeah, this is the equivalent of essentially winning the name a major race, and you are in a goat cart versus everyone else, and somehow the goat cart wins. Like that to me is the difference here. Um, it's ridiculous. Entering a NASCAR, like yeah. Anyway, sorry, it's silly, but what it's not silly is the fact that we really should be taking a better look at what's going on in the world today, and in what's going on with our system. Because I think that some people can look at it and go, well, maybe the government's hiding something. Maybe the government's keeping us away from aliens. Or, more likely, they're covering up their incompetence. Like the no one's at the wheel. Our budget got slashed, so fuck you. We're not doing anything. Yeah, I mean, look at these. This is on NASA's main website, right? And you see these grainy, kind of shitty looking images. And meanwhile, you got images that are, I would say, on par or better, captured by fucking like, a telescope you can throw in the back of your car. I mean, like the image you're looking at right now was taken by a camera. Essentially, essentially utilizing some editing software, but like took a grainy picture that they had used and had enhanced it digitally to create an image of this object. Now there are picture copies of it, right, that are fake. Well, in the sense that they have this image and they're just adding color to the image, right? But the fact that this was done by an amateur in comparison to those blurry ass images that was done by, let's be generous. Let's call it $100 million satellite. I'm not diminishing the necessity for those objects, but I think that they should be able to be useful in certain categories of view. And I think that the idea that these things are not being used to actually document very interesting temporary scientific phenomena is a disappointment. And yeah, that's basically what I got for 3i Atlas that I'd like to talk about. If you want to hear more about this, let us know in the comments below. But we're going to move on to the next story that I think is kind of important. And that story kind of has to do with the government, and it has to do with essentially the education. Now, for those who don't know too much about what's going on with the education world today, you should be aware. The Trump administration effectively destroyed the Biden's era student loan repayment plan, as documented here in U.S. Today. While there are, I'm sure, bias in many of the things that are discussed in this article, it doesn't negate the fact that this really happened. And so, to put this into more details, as I have been able to speak to people who are very familiar with what's going on, here's the gist. The Department of Education got broken up into other agencies. All of the responsibilities and things like that were tied into other things. The only piece of the Department of Education that exists today is the piece that essentially pays students their financial loans. That component is still there. However, there is a new to the books, hasn't even officially been written into law yet, but it will by the end of the second quarter of next year. And that is there's going to be a limit on the amount of money that students can borrow forever. So not like, oh, hey, I paid off my loan and we're good. Like I can continue to borrow more. Like, no, there's a limit forever. And that limit is $250,000. Now, to some people, that sounds like an extraordinarily large amount of money. And to some extent, that is correct. It is a very large amount of money. However, education costs a lot of money. And if you're using student loans to pay for your school and also your living expenses, which, according to most research, suggests that 3/4 of all college students used their financial aid money that they receive, for those whom essentially get financial aid. Not saying that 3/4 of all college students are necessarily getting financial aid, but those whom do are using that to survive, to get fed, to pay for rent, pay for utilities, etc. Gas for their cars, for transportation to school if they live off campus. Uh, that is not cheap. You
No,
can
no,
very
no.
easily go through a very large amount of money, and that's assuming that you pick one thing to do, you follow it all the way through, right? And
No taxis, no switchies.
yeah, you might make it to a master's degree. Forget about a doctorate degree. Forget about, oh, I made a mistake. I need to change up career paths. Forget it. You don't have that option anymore. Not anymore. If you care about like getting into any of these sorts of programs that are going to cost you lots of money, my recommendation is get on it now. Get into the program, get grandfathered into the old way, because you have until they sign it into law, which could happen anytime between January and June of next
Mm,
year.
sounds terrifying.
It is, and I would say that most people probably won't qualify. It's not likely, and it's a shame because it means that the higher throngs of education of society, the people who hold doctorates, PhDs, MDs, these people are going to be very limited. They're going to be in short supply, and
Mm-hmm.
that's just simply not going to do it. We have multiple crises in the United States that require highly trained, highly educated individuals. Just dismantling that, destroying that, is going to inadvertently destroy the country. And it really needs to be stated strongly that this isn't okay. I don't think anyone who voted for people who are in office wanted this. And something needs to be done to change it before permanent damage is done. That's my particular opinion on it. I know that opinions aren't necessarily good things. And too many of our episodes have had me go with a huge opinion and gone, this is what I think, and that's what everyone should believe. Or it could be interpreted that way. I apologize for those episodes, and I don't mean necessarily to say it in those ways. However, in this particular instance, yes, I mean that. I'm not trying to be mean. I mean
Because
it
like this is
sincerely.
a problem and it needs to have a solution like
It does.
fast.
It does. It does. Um, yeah, I just think about the types of people who inspire you and think about how many of them probably had to work very hard to get there.
Mm-hmm.
There may not
And
be
then,
people like that in the future.
not if there's so many factors. Kind of hard to do what you want when you have to struggle for it.
This is true. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and on the part of policies pertaining to things, I'm going to shift a little bit to immigration. And the thing about immigration that I think is really important is that immigration is how we grow as a society. Immigration is something that most, if not all people in America in some way or another have connection with. Maybe it was an ancestor several hundred years ago who boarded a ship in one way or another and came here. Maybe they are migrants, of sorts that travel across an ocean or a land bridge thousands of years ago. Or they're people who yesterday decided that I want a better life and did the necessary documentation a few years ago and now are able to come into the country. Or even those who didn't cross the border legally, but were looking for a better life, safety for their children, perhaps, or family or loved one. Immigration is important in all sorts of ways. I don't think illegal immigration is a good thing. I don't condone it, but I understand why it happens, and I would not alienate people who have crafted a life for themselves here who entered illegally. I would want it to stop. I want to find ways of pursuing things in a humane way, but I don't think sticking military equipped police officers into communities and basically being thugs and grabbing people and then shucking them into internment camps and then sending them to a speculated region of where they may have originated from. I don't think that's the way to do things, and I think that you create fear, and I think you destroy any sort of arm of communication to effectively shape change this way. I think taking a sledgehammer to hammer in a nail is the wrong approach. And I would encourage others to think about what this means when it comes to any time you have an opportunity to vote, because I think that that's really going to be the ways in which we get around this is going to be through legislation. It's going to be around leadership and making sure that the leadership that we put in place corresponds with our values. And if those things are in alignment, then fine. You're entitled to your opinion. But me personally, I am appalled by the inhumane nature in which immigrants are being treated, even the ones that come here legally. And I think it's important to remember that most, if not all, people in America are a form of immigrant in one way or another. And so it's trying not to separate people, because I think that's one of the main things that divides people so much is that there's this one group or this other group, and we go, oh, this person's not part of us, so why are we here? And that's not okay. And I know that like talking about this kind of probably is like, whoa, we normally do video games. Where is this coming from? But I want everyone to know that like the channel's the intention purpose of this was to have difficult conversations about variety of topics. Video games are fun. Sometimes they're a great way to explore certain things. A good way to kind of let your hair down, kind of go, hey, here's what's going on. But these kinds of things are the purpose of this channel, and eventually, this will become kind of the norm again to some extent. Now, people do like gaming, and there's enough voices to say, hey, we really want that to become back. Then we'll put it in whatever you want. But there will be some version of this in the channel connected some way. So, and I want that not to be shocking, and I hope it's not. But I think it's really important that we open up the doors for conversations like these, because I think that they're important. They affect everybody. I mean, think about how many people work on video games. You got to imagine somewhere along the line, whether they're a coder, whether they're a distributor, you know, there's probably immigrants working on some of these games. In fact, some of the best games are made not in the US. So really think about the people who are involved in that. The last thing I kind of feel like I want to talk about is something that is important to me, but I think it's also important to a lot of people, and that is the movies. I know that a lot of people kind of go, well, there's nothing good to watch in the movie theater. Why do I want to spend $25, $50 to go see a movie with a friend? And spend a bajillion dollars on popcorn, hot dogs, and whatever else you gotta eat while you're.
Overpriced popcorn and hot dogs too.
This is true. And I think that, like, to me, like, it's part of an experience. It's like, yeah, you could sit down on your couch and you could watch a movie, and you can kind of, that can be its own thing. And there's a comfort to it. There's a comfort to it. And I think that's okay. But I also think that it's important to make sure we have these things. And one of the things that I find just super shocking about this is the fact that so many of the major movie studios are being bought up by streaming services. Now, we know about MGM a while back got bought up by Amazon, and we know that Disney bought up Fox, and now Netflix has purchased Warner Brothers, Discovery, and that is going to have some serious implications. What incentive does Netflix have for making a movie and then putting it in movie theaters instead of on its streaming platform? Have you ever noticed the fact that when Disney cranks out a movie and it's not going to be a guarantee, like this is going to be the best thing fucking ever, that no one goes and watches it until it comes on Disney Plus. And when Disney Plus comes on, suddenly it's like, oh, this is an interesting movie. We're going to talk about it. What happens to the theaters that just bleed out, and aren't able to get revenue to pay for their own stuff, so they go away. I don't know about everybody who watches this show. I don't know the age group necessarily, but I want to say this: when I was a kid, there used to be drive-in movie theaters all over the place. There were several of them in town. Drive-in movie theater, for those who don't know, you take your car and you go into kind of like a structured parking lot that has a speaker that you put in kind of like in the window, and you sit in your car and you can watch a movie. Some of the coolest ways of watching movies that way was kind of getting like lawn chairs, and you're just like, it's enormous. It's kind of like an IMAX screen almost, but like you're not that super close, but you could be if you wanted to be. And there's lots of ways of experiencing that, but then those went away. Not entirely. There are a few here and there, but they're really not nearly as accessible as they used to be. And I worry and wonder if that's what theaters, cinemas today are going to turn into. Instead of having access to, let's say 6 or 7 in a population of, 4 or 5 million people, we have 6 or 7 decent sized theaters. Instead, we have 52 or one. And I think that'd be a shame, because everybody who knows anything about theaters knows that there are some theaters that are well kept, that are good, and then there are some that are not. And I worry that we will have no say, and the prices of the tickets won't have any competition, so they're going to be extraordinarily high. And much like sports tickets are now, they're going to be regularly inaccessible for the average person. And so our experience to be able to watch the movies is probably going to. And maybe that's just because it's an aging form medium for which to experience things. Maybe people don't care or don't like it that much. And I'm not saying everybody. There are some people out there who are just, this is the way they experience movies. They love it. That's fine. But I think the idea of having the option go away, that part, it bothers me. And I think things like this showcase kind of where it's going. I'm curious about this from your perspective, Rose. Like, I'm sure you probably watch movies occasionally, right?
Occasionally, barely, but occasionally.
Okay. Do you find it, based upon your schedule, is it easier just to stay at home and watch a movie as opposed to going to a movie theater?
Yeah, for the most part. And then it's just a matter of like the movies I do want to watch. Sometimes they're just not in theaters by the time I finally look it up.
Yeah. That makes sense. I mean, that's fair.
Like they're only in theaters for a limited amount of time before they got swapped. So it's just like, oh, sometimes I miss a movie, and then if they don't do marketing, like for instance, the movie sensation that kind of swept was K-pop Demon Hunters. Is like there was like zero advertising for that son of a gun, and that got popular so fast.
Yeah. I wonder, like, when it comes down to it, right? Like, I mean, obviously, like, you're not going to have a movie go on to a streaming platform at the same time it's going to be in movie theaters, like traditionally.
Mm,
Like, I've seen some movies kind of be available to purchase on Amazon at the same time that they've been inside theaters for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, right?
mm-hmm.
But I think when it comes to the fact that streaming services are going to be in some ways controlling some of these movie theaters, they're going to dictate terms. So, instead of having, like, let's say 6 months between when the theatrical release happens and, like, say you could buy it on DVD, it might only be like a month.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me is going to be like, cool. Well, what you just described being the movie I want to watch isn't available in the theater anymore. So why would I go to the theater or watch a movie? Plays into that, I think, a lot.
Mm. I think one thing that they could potentially do is just like see what's popular on their streaming services and then pump it to a theater, because sometimes that full theater experience, because not everybody has, surround system, got
Mm-hmm.
that reverberation effect, the dim lighting,
Mm-hmm.
that sort of thing. Like, I remember seeing so many comments about K-pop Demon Hunters or other similar very popular movies. It was like, oh, if this was in theaters, I would go in a heartbeat.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. I can definitely
Which they
understand
could.
that.
It's like if we wanted to keep the movie tradition alive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, also, home movie theater setups. I mean, they are
They
getting
are
cheaper. They're,
they're
well, they're
cheaper.
getting a lot cheaper though. Like, all right,
Oh,
so
okay.
think of it like this, right? Like, so it's all about the space. The amount of
Yeah.
space you have is what dictates whether or not you can do that or not. So, like, there are some people who have projectors that are, let's say, $400 or $500, so
Mm-hmm.
approaching the price of a television, right? But
Yeah.
they're a smart projector, right? So you can use the same features that you'd find on your smart TV, but you're
Mm-hmm.
using it on a projector. You get a screen, you get blackout curtains. You know what I'm saying? You can create a theory kind of environment, like sorry, not
A
theory,
home theater.
a home theater environment, relatively on the cheap. You can get those blackout curtains for probably 20, $30. Surround sounds aren't. I mean, like, you can get cheap ones. Are they going to sound perfect, flawless? No, but are they going to give you that theater experience? They could, and it would be.
Good.
I mean, I would imagine all said and done, you could probably get a decent theater experience, $1,200. $1,200 gets you to a theater experience that you can make every movie you want to watch a theater experience, assuming you had the space. This is just the equipment, so
Mm-hmm.
space is going to be a big factor in that. But I mean, it depends. You can. It depends on where you live, depends on the things. But the point is that I think that $1,200 is not cheap, but it's accessible. It's like if you can buy a PlayStation 5 and you can buy a Nintendo Switch, right? And the Switch 2, you're getting pretty close just with the consoles, those two consoles of what I'm talking about. You
Oh
throw in a
yeah.
couple of games and you are really there when it comes to the price
Gaming
point.
PCs in general.
Or a gaming PC in general, sure. So, like, to me, the fact of the matter is that people don't want to spend exorbitant money on entertainment, but there are very clear instances where people are. So at some point, that line is going to get crossed. And I think that things
Or
like
maybe.
streaming services controlling the major studios is
Mm-hmm.
kind of ushering that along.
Yeah.
And it concerns me. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, this has been fun. Little chat here. I hope to be able to do more of these in the future. I do intend on bringing in more facts and data sets and things like that for future discussions. Um, I'll share my opinion, but the point behind the episode isn't going to ever be my opinion. It's going to be trying to create thoughtful dialogue. And I hope you become part of that. I'd like to see more people be involved and talk about these things. And if you're ever interested in being a guest on the show and having a discussion, just shoot us an email, which I'm sure you can find in the description. And if you're interested in any of these things, any of the links that we've shared, please look in the description of the video or email the show, and we'll send them to you. Thank you very much for being here. Thanks for everything.
Have a good one.
All right. Bye.
Ta-da.